Here's my sneaky little strategy of how I've helped thousands of clients over the past 2 decades heal old emotional wounds so they can move forward from trauma and bad things that have happened in their lives, embrace their inner badass mentality so that way they can handle any conflict, chaos, or challenge that life throws at them, and also help them feel like they're not at war with themselves or feeling like they're constantly battling themselves. This helps people feel a sense of inner peace and ease so that way they're not constantly struggling through life and things just get easier for them. And no, this isn't just a strategy. This goes a lot deeper than a strategy. This is more of a principle. It's a mentality, and it's an underlying facet of how we change, how we think, and how we engage and interact with people. Now, in case you're new to me, welcome to the conversation. I'm Dan Candell. I'm known worldwide as the Anxiety Relief Guy. If you're not new to me, welcome back to the conversation. Great to have you here. And I do have some notes in front of me just to make sure I stay on task. But the sneaky little strategy that I've been using since I was back in college, because I've been doing this kind of work since I was a teenager. This is something that I discovered in my bachelor's degree in my undergrad work when I started really doing a deep dive into clinical work. And I do this with a lot of individuals who are high performers, even therapists and coaches, and most of them, they don't even realize what I'm doing until after the work is already done. Now, this also isn't something that can be done in one session. Like I said, it's more of a principle that you're learning that changes your perspective about things, and it also explains so much about you, and it gives you so much insight into yourself, so you become even more of a whole person. This isn't journaling. This isn't surface level mindset work or coaching. It's not really even conscious cognitive therapy. What it is that I've been doing, which I would say maybe about 20% of the people have heard about that I work with, most haven't. It's called shadow work, shadow integration, which is the foundation of Jungian psychology from Carl Jung. And this was supported even more when one of my mentors was one of the co-founders of the Centerpoint Foundation. And the Centerpoint Foundation was a foundation and a belief in a school of knowledge that's based on Jungian therapy and Jungian psychology. And it's fascinating. I'm going to share some little facets with you because just knowing it. Now, keep in mind, knowledge is power. And just knowing some of the stuff behind shadow work can actually help you break free from old emotional wounds. It can help you embrace your inner badass mentality. And it can also help you establish a little bit more inner peace and also understanding, not just about yourself, but about other people and why other people feel the way they do about you and why you feel the way you do about other people. So let's dive in. Most people don't realize this, but the reason why they're still stuck even after years of coaching or therapy is because they've only worked with the parts of themselves that they accept. They have not yet worked with the parts of themselves that they've rejected, that they've pushed down, that they've ignored, that they were taught were wrong or bad, until we do shadow integration. And if you've ever said, I know what I should be doing, but I'm not doing it, that's the shadow side talking. And we all have a shadow side. And like I said, it's the part of us that we've ignored, rejected, denied, or that we were taught was wrong, that we shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't do those things. We shouldn't speak that way. And if we don't properly integrate the shadow, then it keeps us small. It makes us feel like we're getting in our own way. It makes us feel like we're constantly filled with internal resistance. Everything seems difficult. Everything seems like a challenge. And many of us lose a sense of who we are. We don't even know who we really are until we start integrating the shadow side of us as well. If we don't integrate the shadow, guess what happens? It can start to come out and manifest in unhealthy ways. It can manifest sometimes as severe resentment, guilt, shame, embarrassment. It can come out in anger and anxiety and panic and overwhelm and stress. It can even manifest in physical discomfort where it holds you back physically from doing something that you want to do. The shadow, if it's not properly integrated, it will sabotage you. And a lot of people hear the word shadow and they think, oh, the shadow is all bad, but it's not all bad. When we do healthy shadow integration, it's actually really good. In fact, Jung had this theory that all resentment, all anger, all dislike came from envy. Because the theory is, if you dislike somebody, you dislike the part of them that represents what you feel bad about showing with yourself. I'll give you an example of this. When I was first learning about this in my bachelor's degree, getting my bachelor's degree in my undergrad course, there was this student, and we'll call her Sarah. And she was like the Hermione Granger of the class. Every single time the professor asked a question, boom, her hand would be the first one up. And if no one's hand was raised, she'd do this, and then finally she'd blurt out the answer. And it got to the point where we all just became so annoyed at her, and we're like, oh, shut up, Sarah. And we're like, oh, here's Sarah, the know-it-all. Oh, just ask Sarah. And it became almost like the class joke. One day, Sarah didn't show up to class. And we were all like, oh, thank God, we don't have to listen to that loudmouth know-it-all today. And like, we were all so relieved, myself included. And the professor overheard what we were talking about. And he used that as a perfect illustration of, let's just all take a step back for a moment. Let's like pump the brakes and take a step back. And let's look at the things that you're saying about Sarah. The reason why you're criticizing her and the reason why you're annoyed with her is because she actually does the work. She knows the answers because she does the work. She engages, she participates, and she makes herself heard. And he said, all of you could take a note from Sarah's book, because the reason why you despise her, the reason why she annoys you, is because she symbolizes in all of you what you refuse to do. None of you participate. None of you raise your hand and say the answers. None of you speak up for yourselves. He said, and all of you resent that because that's what comes so easily for Sarah, what doesn't come easily for you. And he used it as a lesson to describe the reason why we get annoyed or frustrated or agitated with some people, or the reason why we despise some people. It's because they are the perfect embodiment of our shadow side. The exact same thing can be true as to why some people don't like us. The reason why people don't like us is because we symbolize that which they're suppressing, ignoring, or denying within themselves. In fact, many of you watching this may or may not know, I'm also a stage performer. I'm a presenter. I'm a keynote speaker. And part of what I do is I'm a comedian, a stage hypnotist, a mind reader, and I also do a lot of speaking for different corporations and groups. And what I noticed is that earlier on in life, I wasn't always like the confident guy that goes on stage and can command a crowd. In my personal life, I was very introverted. I was very shy. I would stand back. I wasn't a fan of crowds. I still don't love crowds, but I would just like fade back into the background. And constantly people are like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Because they were used to the stage guy. And they thought that's who I was all the time. And I'm like, I'm not that guy. That's a character that I play. The guy on stage, that guy who's outgoing, who pushes the envelope. He's a little dirty. He's a little crass. He cracks jokes. He makes fun of people. Like, that guy is a character that I play. That's not really who I am. And guess what? That was my shadow side. Because everything that my stage persona was, I was taught not to be that way. I was taught not to treat people that way. I was taught not to say those things. I was taught to fade into the background, to keep myself small. And I wasn't taught that by my parents. I was taught that by society. I was taught that by my peers. I was taught that by the education system. Those were my experiences. That's what I learned. And when I started learning more about shadow integration, guess what I did? I started to subconsciously integrate parts of my stage persona into my personal life with my friendships and my relationships. Now, guess what happened, though? That turned some people off. But they didn't really know the real me. They didn't really know the real me. And that's why it turned some people off. Some of the people didn't like that I started speaking up for myself. Some people didn't like that I started to have more fun, that I started to enjoy my life a little bit more. They were used to the introverted, shy Dan. They thought that shyness meant that I was kind. Introverted meant that I was quiet and that I just took things in. And then when I started being more open with people, that turned some people off. But you know what? That's fine. I chose to let those people go. And I did. And it was totally fine. You know what happened? I made space for the people who do matter. And that's part of why we want to do shadow integration. Now, this is just a small part of that. What I'm describing is just a small part of shadow integration. But if we don't properly integrate the shadow, as I said, it can come out and manifest in some pretty unhealthy ways. So shadow work is really just about uncovering the parts of yourself that you've pushed away or tried to hide. We're talking about shame, guilt, anger, fear, resentment, anxiety, but also the parts of you that are powerful, loud, ambitious, confident, knows the answer, speaks up for yourself, holds your own, the part of you that's strong, the part of you that's a doer. And many of us, we're told that if we embrace that, then we're too much. We're too much. And as I said, you might not have been told that by your parents, but these are things we learn as we go through our collective experiences through our child years and through our teenage years. And the shadow, it's very important that you understand it's not dark, it's honest. And a lot of people are afraid to confront that honest part of themselves. That's why shadow work can sometimes be a little difficult for people to do if they're not doing it in a safe space. And that's why I combine different methods of hypnosis with shadow integration to make sure people feel safe and comfortable while they're integrating their shadow. As I said, I first got hooked on this in college when I was going through Jungian Psychology courses, and it made sense to me. And it made sense as a foundation of change work. And as I started weaving it into my hypnosis and coaching sessions and in my group programs, my clients started getting results way faster. They understood parts of themselves that they didn't understand before. People would say things like, I don't know what just happened, but I finally feel like I'm not at war with myself anymore. Things feel easier. I'm having those conversations that I was avoiding before. When you stop rejecting those parts of yourself, you stop leaking energy. You stop fighting, and you start integrating your inner awesome. That's a name for a program, isn't it? Integrating your inner awesome. I like that. The reason why shadow work, though, creates real change is because mindset work will give you motivation. Shadow work will give you liberation. It frees those parts of yourself that were so desperately trying to get out, but you've just been pushing back constantly because you thought they were wrong on an unconscious level. This is the foundation of every transformation, because without it, you're always compensating for the part of you that you haven't faced yet. It helps you build actual inner peace, real confidence, and an emotional range without guilt or fear, so you start becoming more emotionally intelligent. So if this resonates with you and you're like, yeah, I want to do more of this, I want to learn more about this, I am actually doing a 3-day workshop that's called the Inner Shadow Work Lab. And it's like we're going in the lab with you. And it's a group program, and it's about an hour and a half a day for 3 days, and we're going to dive deep. We're going to dive deep into shadow work, discovering your shadow, all aspects of your shadow, and integrating it in a really safe space so you too can embrace your inner badass, so you too can get liberation from those anxieties and old emotional wounds, and so you too can feel like you're not at war with yourself anymore, so you establish a little bit more inner peace. This is done on a subconscious level, not a conscious level, and we integrate all parts of yourself so you feel whole again, or maybe for the first time. So with that said, link is in the description of this video or podcast, wherever you're experiencing this conversation. I look forward to having you in that workshop. As always, be well, do good, be true to who you are, happy healing. Also, make sure you leave me a comment, rate, subscribe, all the good stuff that helps me help you. Bye for now.